Dodge had a big failure on their hands, and that was the Intrepid. Now, I know many of you are going to argue that the Intrepid was actually a successful model. And you know what? It actually was up until a certain point. Now, it was a full-size sedan, and it was fine for a good deal of its production. But there was a particular engine that had got introduced later on that was actually a complete disaster. I'm one of those individuals that had this issue that we're going to talk about. Now, a lot of people probably got their Intrepids up to 150,000, heck, 200,000 miles maybe, and if you're one of those individuals, good for you. That's amazing. But unfortunately, a lot of people that owned this vehicle, they had horrible problems with it. So we're going to talk about that. All right, we're going to talk about how the Intrepid began and all that good stuff. So grab a snack and let's talk about it. The Intrepid was a member of the LH family, and it made a public display at the 1992 North American International Auto Show. So there were two more LH cars at this auto show, and that was the Chrysler Concorde and the Eagle Vision. So these cars went on sale in 1992 for the 1993 model year, and they went all the way up to 1997. So 1993 was the first year for the Intrepid, but you could actually buy one in 1992, around late summer, fall of 92. Now, some of you might be aware of this, but a lot of people still don't know. Lamborghini played a role in the Dodge Intrepid and the Viper, but we'll discuss that in a different video. So when the Intrepid first went on sale, you could get a standard 3.3 liter V6 with 153 horsepower or a 3.5 V6 with 214 horsepower. Back in 1992, people loved the way this car looked, even myself. I remember first seeing it. So these cars featured the cab forward styling, and this is pretty much the wheels were pushed out to the corners of the body. It had a short sloping hood and a large windshield extending from its base over the front wheels. So what this did was this increased interior volume. So you had a lot more space on the inside. That's pretty much what the cab forward was. And this was demonstrated not only in the Intrepid, but the other two LH cars that I mentioned that was at the 1992 auto show. So the Vision as well as the Concorde. So when the Intrepid first came out, it was a drastic departure from the typical sedans you could get from Dodge or Chrysler. Now, I'm not going to name every single Dodge car from that era, but most of their stuff was boxy around that time in 1993. Most of these sedans were boxy or just looked like they were right out of the 80s. Okay, so most of their sedans, as you see on the screen, look like the 1980s with the exception of the Colt. Okay, the Colt being the exception, but still that car was nothing but a Mitsubishi. So this one was more rounded and it actually looked like a car from the early to mid 90s, but everything else that they had at the time, yeah, it looked like it was straight out of the 80s. So that's why the Intrepid made such a huge impact when it first got its public unveiling. So in person, this new Intrepid looked kind of like a concept car that was legal to drive on public roads and could actually be used for daily activities. That's how dramatic the styling was. Now, in terms of reliability, this was not considered the best, but it was still deemed reliable with a Kelley Blue Book rating of 3.9 out of 5. Not too shabby of a reliability score, but unfortunately this reputation would begin to erode as the years went on. At first, things were going fine for the Dodge Intrepid. Then as time progressed, owners started having a bit of trouble with the car. With over a decade on the market, there were about 2,000 different reports of significant problems regarding this car, and that can be found on a website called Dodge Problems. And also on that website, the Intrepid was ranked last in overall reliability by Dodge. So the Intrepid had 3 common complaints, and these were pretty bad and downright weird issues. So one of the weird problems that many drivers reported was how their Intrepids would get stuck in park and not allow them to shift out of it. And this was even a big problem on other Dodge cars such as the Avenger. Now, I didn't find any complaints regarding the original 2-door coupe Avenger. All of these complaints came from the later sedan Avenger. Other Intrepid owners reported random holes and cracks would appear in their dashboards, and that's quite a bummer, to go out and buy a new car only to have a hole appear in your dashboard. But either way, I guess that's better than having your transmission stuck in park, because that's a mechanical issue that could cost a lot of money, obviously, if it's still not under warranty. But this was the worst. Out of all the huge problems with this car, I'm gonna say this one caused the most pain and suffering for Intrepid owners, and it was oil sludge buildup. Now, this mainly affected the later models, but this oil sludge caused catastrophic engine failure for many owners of this car. Now, I am a fan of the Intrepid. I think they still have a great design that still holds up by today's standards, but I also think it was the second generation that really messed up this car's reputation, and I'm going to explain why. So the second generation Intrepid went on sale in 1997 for the 1998 model year, and at first you could get a 2.7 liter, a 3.2, and then later on a 3.5. The new all aluminum dual overhead cam 2.7 liter was the base engine and was good for 200 horsepower, and you could get a single overhead cam 3.2 liter in the ES trim level, and this motor was good for 225 horsepower. And later on, there was a new top-of-the-line RT model added in 1999, and this had a redesigned version of the 3.5 liter V6, which now cranked out 242 horsepower. With the 3.5, there was a regular and a high output version. So the major problem with this generation Intrepid was the notorious sludge buildup problem, but this issue was more prevalent in cars with a 2.7 liter engine. Now, as someone who actually owned a 2.7 liter car, let me tell you, if you missed the oil change interval by even just a few days, you pretty much set yourself up for failure, because that engine would sludge up. And the other available engines were not perfect, but at least the owners of those didn't have to deal with more frequent than usual oil changes as a way to prevent the sludge. But still, a lot of drivers had this problem despite increasing the frequency of their oil changes. The second biggest complaint for the second generation Intrepid was engine knocking. So yes, engine knocking is still a big problem, but only severe cases actually prevented the car from being functional. Now, this issue did not affect every 2.7, but it did affect many. And I also want to add, these engines were only expected to last around 80,000 to 100,000 miles, even with regular maintenance. So yeah, this 2.7 liter engine was a disaster for the brand, but you could still get an Intrepid for a few more years after all this stuff was going on. But either way, the problems kept going on, sales declined, and depending on who you ask, a lot of people lost trust not only within the Intrepid, but Chrysler products in general. Now, I'm not going to say that this was the only reason the Intrepid was canceled. To be fair, by 2004, the second generation had been on sale for quite some time, and I mean, popularity was just beginning to dwindle. Yes, the Cab 4 design was revolutionary in 1992 when the LH sedans first hit the showroom floors, but many people say these cars were beginning to feel old by the mid-2000s. So the Intrepid was out after 2004, but people who still wanted a full-size sedan from Dodge, they just had to wait and get the new Charger. So the new Charger came out with rear-wheel drive, an optional V8, and it was based on the new LX platform. So nowadays, not too many people talk about the Intrepid. I guess because it ended on a sour note with all those problems. Disregarding the reliability issues, I like both of the Intrepid generations. So when the second generation Intrepid went on sale in 1997 for the 1998 model year, I thought it looked great. I thought it was one of the best looking cars out there at the time, and you know what, I still think it looks great, even if it didn't make as much of a splash as the 1993 version did. So will they ever bring the Intrepid back? Who knows? I think if the market switches back to sedans, or if people suddenly realize they want more of a variety than just crossovers, then maybe some of these old nameplates will be brought back. I think there's going to be changes over at Stellantis, so we'll just have to sit back and see what happens. And you don't see too many Intrepids on the road, and you don't see too many for sale online either. If you do see them on sale, it's usually with the 3.5 liter engine. You don't see too many with the 2.7, and we already know why. So if you're one of those owners and you do have a 2.7 and you was able to get it up to 150 or 200,000 miles, good for you, because a lot of you guys left me comments saying that your Intrepid is still running, your Concorde is still running, your LHS is still running, and it's close to 200,000 miles. Well, hey, good on you. I'm willing to bet those cars probably don't have the 2.7 liter engine, because I had a Sebring and an Intrepid, and both of those were very problematic with that engine. But let me know what you guys think about the Dodge Intrepid, and I will catch you on the next one.